All right. Welcome to the Alliance podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nikhil Sharma, and I'm so grateful to have you guys here with us today. In today's topic, we're going to be tackling a modern epidemic, the glorification of doing it all. We live in a culture that praises hustle over harmony, busyness over balance, and productivity over purpose. But here's the reality. Just because you can do it all doesn't mean you should. Many of us are running on empty, saying yes to everything, chasing endless to-do lists, and wondering why we're still feeling drained, disconnected, and unfulfilled. The truth is that your capacity is not infinite, and aligning your goals with what truly matters is the key to long-term success and well-being. To help us break this down today, we have an incredible guest with us, Monica Helvey, who is a therapist who specializes in mindful goal setting, burnout recovery, and emotional well-being. She's here to help us understand how to shift from doing it all to doing what aligns with our values, energy, and personal capacity. Welcome to the show, Monica. We're so grateful to have you back with us today.
Thank you so much. I love being here with you, so I am so excited to dive into this.
Right on. Well, let's just start with the big question. Why do so many people feel like they have to do everything? Where does that come from?
Oh man, it is it is a well, right? The folks that I tend to work with who tend to want to do it all for everyone all the time tend to be these folks who are ambitious, they are high achieving, they are driven, they are goal oriented. And what I find with those folks is sometimes somewhere along the way, they once learned that their acceptance, their love, their security and worthiness were conditional, and they were connected to their productivity and their achievement. So while that was probably, a very adaptive thing to learn early on and was maybe even motivating for them earlier on, and it could even have produced success for them early on. What I find when they come to work with me is that oftentimes they're feeling a sense of disconnectedness, burnout, overwhelm, resentment, and they have this deep sense of lack of fulfillment, that everything that they've been doing, all these accomplishments, all this on paper success still isn't enough. And that is absolutely one of those key indicators that we are being motored by a maybe ego or something that's deep rooted that needs to be identified and healed so that we can break out of this trap.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that really resonates with what I feel like I personally have gone through in life. And I think a lot of my values were shaped by my parents or society as we were growing up. And I think you hit it on the head when you said that we are taught to seek love externally, and we're not really taught the skill set to be able to internally validate ourselves. So our whole lives, we are trying to prove ourselves to other individuals. And in order for us to prove to other individuals that we are worthy of their love, we feel like we need to take on tasks to try to help other individuals as much as we possibly can. And then receive that gratification of, oh my God, thank you so much for being there for me. I don't know what I would have done without you in my life, right? Because that does feel good to hear from other individuals, right?
And absolutely. It's so reinforcing, right? Just like, oh, you're so helpful. That's so useful. You're so smart. Like all of these things are really rewarding. But then again, it kind of keeps driving that internal sense, that internal belief that you see, we do have more acceptance and love and worthiness when we're working really hard, when we're doing everything for everyone.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, we get caught up into this seeking of external validation and seeking love and wanting to do things for other individuals because it feels so good. It almost becomes like an addiction for us. Or many of us, especially people who are people pleasers, who have been taught that, hey, it's important to help others. And that's so crazy. I'm just thinking about that. I was brought up in that, and it actually makes me feel so good, genuinely makes me feel good to help other individuals. But the problem is that when we're growing up, no one taught us how to construct boundaries, or when to stop, or when is enough, right? To
Yeah.
help other individuals. Because I know I wasn't taught that. So for me, it was really hard to say no to anybody else. And I felt good, again, about like helping other individuals. But then I noticed over time that I started choosing work or helping others over what was going on internally with me. It's almost as if I was having some inner turmoil that I didn't want to deal with. And I wanted to feel good about myself. So what I did was I was like, oh, let me help you out. Okay, yeah, don't worry. You need help moving? I got you. Oh, you need help with, some major issues that's going on with your life? Don't worry. I can leave what I'm doing right now and come to you. And so it's kind of like, why do so many, high achievers struggle with slowing down? And what are some warning signs that we can have in order for us to realize or become aware of, like, hey, something isn't right, you're off balance, you're burning out. What can we do?
Yeah. So you touched on so much of, again, why it's hard for people to slow down is because it's really rewarding. And when we start to even identify ourselves as being the helper, as being the fixer, the problem solver, the go-to person, right? We start to sense our identity in it, which then keeps that belief really strongly rooted. It makes it really hard to say, okay, I can rest if you now have a belief that I have to work hard to have security. Right? I have to earn this lovability from my partner. Well, now you can't sit down and relax with your partner on the couch and watch a movie because you have this belief that tells you need to be the one who's doing and moving and making things happen, right? So it starts to become an internal conflict to receive and to accept rest and to even attune to yourself more than you're attuning to the people around you. Like that becomes a tension point internally, right? So our nervous system doesn't like that tension. It leads to chronic stress and that drives even burnout in and of itself. So your nervous system wants this familiarity and it wants to believe what it's always believed. And so if we have always believed that it's not possible for me to rest, or I can't receive somebody helping me, or me asking for my needs or help, like I have to be the helper. If we cannot accept that, then our nervous system is just going to keep us in the performance mode, in the doing mode, right? Which is a state of survival.
Yeah, because again, once our bodies get used to a certain way of being, any type of change that we try to do is going to cause some resistance in our body, in our brain, in our prefrontal cortex. Because when we try to say, no, I can't do that, to somebody that you've been always saying yes to all the time, and you've always been there for, there's something that goes on in our brain that's like, oh my God, like, what are they going to say if I say no?
Absolutely. And here's the thing though, is this is what I need people to understand, is that when you're drained, when you're overwhelmed, when you're starting to have this resentment that you're the go-to person all the time, you're not fully showing up for those people. Right. And so the best gift that you can give those people that you care so much that you want to help is to regulate yourself and to be the most present, aligned version of yourself for them. And that requires, noticing when you're misaligned. And so to kind of go back to your point too, like, how do they know? Well, sometimes the signs are, when somebody calls you before you even answer the phone, you might have a sense of like, oh, I know they're going to ask me for something.
That's
right.
So
I'm sure. Or this sense of like, man, I don't want to go to that thing because I know I'm going to have to perform. I'm going to have to do something, right? When you have this internal narrative that's sort of telling you like, I'm not all in, this isn't a heck yes for me, then that's where, like, your empathy is kind of wearing thin, or your compassion is wearing thin. Those are the signals that internally there's a misalignment.
Yeah. No, you're right. That makes perfect sense. And I that has happened to me often where, you do get that phone call, or you feel uncomfortable going to a social setting where, there's going to be people who are going to want to, talk your ear off about personal issues that are going on. And you know that those individuals, and I like to call them energy vampires, because
oh yeah, that's what I call them.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think
100%.
because they're truly draining your energy. And I wanted people to think about like themselves as like a highly concentrated water. And I'm sure if you guys remember back in the day, we learned a term called osmosis, where high concentration of water tends to go to low concentration of water, right? So when we're in this high vibrational state of being, because we are the light, we're these empaths, we are people who they like to look up to and go to. Those individuals typically have lower concentrations of water. They're lower vibrational individuals. So when you're naturally around people like that, your energy will be sucked towards them because you are in a higher vibrational state of being. So I hope people understand that now, right? Where it's just that if you're in this different stratosphere, you attract individuals who want to or seek your guidance because you're this light,
Yeah. And absolutely. And that makes perfect sense into also why like boundaries become so important, and knowing that you're even having that experience with somebody, being able to pay attention to that is so huge, because it's nothing personal. This is the reality, is it's not like you don't care about that person, or that you don't love that person or want to, help them or do well for them. But the reality is that you, like you said earlier, your capacity is limited. You are not an endless supply. And so we have to be able to tune into that, what's happening there in that relationship, and make some adjustments.
So the hardest part, I feel, is to change and then set boundaries, because, again, you are now afraid that people who you've been there for, they're going to react. And many do. I know in my experience that I've had to set boundaries with individuals along my personal growth journey, that it has caused a lot of projection. And so at times that can make people fall back into familiar patterns of people pleasing. But what have you guided your clients on what to expect and how to reinforce these boundaries, whether that's to your family members, it could be to your husband, right? They're just different individuals who you feel that are draining you, and you need some personal space, but you find it hard because they are so close to you to do that. So how do we guide individuals on what to expect and what to do?
Yeah. I have so much empathy for folks who are experiencing that. And I just, I want to normalize that does sometimes happen, especially, again, as you're talking about these folks who are really benefiting from you carrying the energy, you carrying the light, right? Like they benefit from having you in their life. And so I have even so much empathy for those folks who are like, hey, you're the only source of light and you're trying to take that from me, right? Like that does something for them. So I have so much compassion for everyone in that dynamic. And I want to still say that you are responsible for managing and caring for your capacity. And it's not anybody else's responsibility. So you are not responsible to give your light to anyone, right? Like that is not your job. You have to make sure that you are prioritizing your wellness and your rest and your balance, because you cannot, like they say, you can't pour from an empty cup, and you also can't fill an empty cup while it's running. Like if you're running with your cup and trying to pour in, like you're so busy, you're so in your doing mode, you're not going to be able to replenish yourself in a really truly restorative way. So because you are not an infinite source of energy, of light, of resources, it is only your responsibility to take care of that for you and to secure that for yourself. So permission granted. Okay. It's okay to do that. It is going to create some reactions in people around you, because you are affecting them, but you're not responsible for their reactions. Okay. So I want to say that. Now, how I support my clients in doing this work and staying in alignment with their boundaries, even if it means that people have a reaction to them pulling back their energy, is I let my clients know, like, hey, one hand on your heart, one hand on your stomach, and you're pushing yourself back into you, right? Because when we're people pleasing, we're kind of leaning out. We're sort of, what do you need? How can I support you?
Yeah.
And so the first step is to somatically come back here and remind ourselves that, like, this is what I'm responsible for. Okay. So one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly, leaning back into yourself.
I love that.
Okay. Letting yourself know it's safe to take care of myself. It's actually really okay for me to rest. It's actually really healthy for me to have boundaries around my time and my energy, right? Because people pleasing is a response to feeling unsafe with taking care of yourself. I have to take care of you in order to be safe and secure. And so that is sort of the belief that drives people pleasing, is I am more worthy, lovable, accepted, safe, secure if I am taking care of other people. And so we need to give the opposite message to ourselves in those moments. And that, like, imagine like being with little Monica or with little Nick, right? And just saying, hey, it's so okay for you to rest. It's so okay for you to not want to go do that thing right now. Yeah. It's okay.
No, it's not only is okay, it's truly needed, and it helps you blossom to levels of life that you couldn't even imagine that you were able to accomplish, or things that you were able to accomplish. I remember when I had gone through a major burnout, I wanted to do something new, create Alliance. At the same time, I was still working in the hospital. But then there was all these different things that were happening in my life, where my dad was sick, during this period, and my dog kind of got sick. And there was just so much dysfunction that was really happening. And all of it centered around me not being balanced and me being overworked and burnt out. Because as much as I was trying to help my dad, I wasn't able to help him in the capacity that he needed. And you know what I mean? Because and then as much as I was trying to focus on work, I wasn't able to focus on work as well as I needed to be able to do so, because I was burnt out and I was being stretched in all these different directions. And the only thing that was going to help me was to set up boundaries with everything and everyone initially, and meant like leaving work for a little while, spending some time in solitude, and really tapping in to what it is that Nick Hill really wants. What is it that I need to want to accomplish in this lifetime? What are my values? What are my character strengths? I needed to recreate that foundation. And that started with spending time alone. We are often extremely distracted all the time. We don't know what we want because we're always being pulled in so many different directions. We have kids, we have dogs, we have parents, they get sick, we have work. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so I found that just spending some time on your own really helps you connect with what it is that you're truly seeking. And then you're nourishing that. You are able to put into that time, because when you are doing your best, everyone around you is truly blossoming.
100%. Yeah, the boundaries allow you to show up full-heartedly for the people you care about, right? So when you're saying no to something, what you're offering them is your full heart later, when you're in alignment with your capacity. And so that's so right on.
And so, and the other thing that I realized during that time being burnt out was I found myself being sick a lot of the times. I felt like I was catching viruses. I was catching, bacterial infections. I just felt constantly dragged down. And that's what happens. And that was one of the main things, reasons I left Alliance, was to prove to people that your mental health and well-being and being balanced is going to help your physical health improve. Because when you are stressed, it sets off these inflammatory markers that get off in your body, and they go and try to find this bacteria that's running around your system. But if there's no bacteria or virus and it was set off during stress, well, then those inflammatory markers go sit on your stomach, sit on your heart, sit on your brain, cause headaches, cause bloating, cause your heart rate to be sped up, right? These are symptoms of anxiety. And then over time, those inflammatory markers start causing disruption of your cells. And that's what leads to things like autoimmune diseases, cancers, and so there's no coincidence that the rate of autoimmune disorders and cancers are up due to the decline of our mental health. So
100%. Yes.
it's just very
Preach.
important how people can tie that together, because when they can, they'll realize that, hey, I really do need to focus on getting myself into balance. Why am I being overly stressed or overly stretched out? And what are some of those actions I can do to call back my energy, so now I can truly help other individuals? I'm working on an application to do that. I'm doing these other curriculums to help kids. That was not possible in the state of being that I was in before. So
and so again, let yourself, like, your story is a visual representation of, like, hey, we call back our energy, and it's again like this bow and arrow analogy. Like, we pull back so we can launch forward. And that gets to be the aftermath, right, of coming in and saying, no, wait, hang on, this isn't my responsibility. This right here, this person is my responsibility. I get one freaking shot here to live my life fully and wholeheartedly. And so I have to prioritize me here, so that then I can launch forward and have this explosive growth and give more to my communities and help my families. All these things are possible on the other side of attuning to your capacity and taking really good restorative care of yourself.
Do you suggest individuals or your clients to have these conversations, actual conversations, with the people that they're setting boundaries with? Or do you have them just, set a boundary and move forward? Because I don't know, I feel like sometimes over explaining yourself to an individual becomes harmful in itself. So how do you have, what are the steps that these people should take when they are setting these boundaries?
So I let my clients know that sometimes it can be helpful and sometimes it could be harmful, right?
Yeah.
And so I want my clients to make that decision based off what they know about the relationship and the safety they feel in the relationship. The reality, some people will weaponize your boundaries against you, and those people are not healthy people, but that is the reality. And so when we're sharing about our boundaries, I want my clients to know that they're doing so from a grounded place, from a place of wanting to have connection over the boundary versus explaining or justifying or rationalizing the boundary. So if there's a feeling of, I need to explain this to you or rationalize this for you so that you can understand it, we're still people pleasing.
Yeah, that's true.
So if we're instead saying, like, hey, I want to connect with you over this thing, and so let me tell you what I'm doing differently, that is, again, to connect. That is so we can be aligned in what we're doing moving forward. And I'll give you an example of that. That could maybe look like, hey, I'm practicing not responding to opportunities for 30 minutes before I say yes or no. Like, I'm practicing pausing. And so I'm informing you, here's what I'm doing. It's not that I didn't see your opportunity. It's not that I don't want to do this opportunity, but I'm practicing pausing and checking in with myself first before I say yes. And so this could be to a family member who's invited you over for dinner or, whatever. And you could say, I'm practicing on all requests for my time that I'm pausing first. And that would be a way to inform and connect over it versus I'm not justifying it to you. I'm not hoping that you approve of my boundary, right? I'm just informing you.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And so kind of getting towards what we initially were talking about is how can people stop themselves from doing everything and then aligning themselves and then focusing themselves on what it is that they should be, putting their time and energy in. How do people figure that part out? And how do you guide them through this process of truly aligning yourself with what matters the most instead of everything?
Totally. So the first thing I say is we've got to explore and respect your capacity as step number one. Okay. So remember, part of what makes up your capacity is your time, your energy, your mental and emotional bandwidth, and your resources. Okay. So when you are exploring and being really honest with yourself about, like, how much time do I really have for this thing? How much resources do I have to offer this thing? Mental, emotional bandwidth. When you're checking in with those things first, then sometimes that already like gives you the clue is like, hey, the reality is I don't have very much time to do this project. I don't have any resources to offer you in lieu of my presence. And I really don't have the mental capacity to even sit on this panel or to do this thing or to whatever. And so I don't have enough capacity based on these just 3 indicators. So it's going to have to be a no for me, right?
Yes.
So exploring your capacity first and foremost. And this could be, again, something as simple as like, hey, do you want to go with us? We're taking a weekend trip, girls trip, whatever. And you're like, okay, I have the time, but I don't have the resources. I don't really have the energy for that because that might mean I have to set things up for the kids and do this and do that, right? And so you might be looking at that and say, I have the time, but these other markers, I don't have enough of. And so even though there's some parts of me that say yes, it's not a full body yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit of like aligning with capacity there. And then even sometimes when you notice like, oh, it's a tight squeeze, like there is some capacity, but it's not a full capacity, you might say, you know what, I'm going to stretch, but it's an intentional stretch versus a survival reflex of, yeah, sure, put me down for anything. What time? What do you need? Right? Like an overextended yes. It could be a little bit more of an intentional, oh, I know this is going to be a stretch, or I know this might challenge me and grow me.
Yeah.
But I want to. This is an invitational yes versus a compulsion.
Yeah, that point you made is great, because otherwise I notice myself then always saying no to invites, to going out to places, because, I can always make an excuse to say no, right? But I think it is important to recognize when you do say yes, the type of yes that you're saying it with. Like it's not just some reaction, oh my God, yes, let me help you out, or let me come there, I will do anything for you, type of yes. But inside, that you're feeling stretched, versus, hey, I do feel rested. I do feel like I can be on this panel. It might be a little challenging. It might be something new, but I think it will help me in my personal growth and my professional growth journey. So two different ways.
And that's huge because, again, for some of the high achievers I work with, their problem is not wanting to say yes. Their problem is saying yes to everything. Right. But then sometimes in their healing of burnout, they pendulate the other way. Yes. And now we're saying no to everything.
Yes.
No, right? Yes. I'm the no guy, right?
That's what's happened to me for sure. For a while.
So this next step is going to be the important piece of this too, right? Yeah. Now the next thing you need to do when you're aligning your capacity is also being intentional about your goals and your values. So if you have a value for connection, or if you have a value for personal growth or personal development, now when you're looking at your capacity and you're like, well, it's a tight squeeze, then you look at your values and you say, no, I actually value community and connection.
Boom.
Okay, now I'm going to say yes, and it's with some pause, but it is more aligned than saying no.
And I noticed when I do reflect back on my values, which I had to redo when I was on this journey, and personal growth is one of them, philanthropy, but community and connection is another one. So when I do say yes, even though sometimes there's some hesitation and I do end up going out, I feel so much better after that event and hanging out with friends. I really feel re-energized. So I love when you're saying these things, and I'm feeling re-energized because it is one of my values, and I've identified community and connection as a value, top 5 value for myself. So for those listening out there, I would take some time and write out, what are the things that you value most? Just write 5 things down, that are most important to you, whether that's your family, whether that's playing sports, personal growth, eating healthy, whatever these values are, it's important that you write them down now, because your values can change over time.
Absolutely.
But we never go back to reassess them. And so our minds become a little cluttered. And that's a reason why we will find ourselves doing a lot of different things and getting pulled in different directions, because the old versions of ourselves still like certain things, but it's not truly bringing us any emotional fulfillment or purpose to our life. And so we need to stop doing some of those things and putting more time into things that we actually value at our current state of being.
1000%.
Yeah. Right on, right on. So, look, any final words for people out there, Monica, that are listening, that you would give
Yeah.
advice on trying to get themselves more aligned and prioritizing their time and energy?
Yeah, yeah. Again, to the folks who are out there doing everything for everyone, I really want them to understand that when you are drained and overwhelmed and exhausted and resentful, you are not showing up emotionally available and fully, wholeheartedly for your family, for the people you love and care about. And so the best thing that you can do as a partner, as a loving community member, as a family member, is to take a hard look at your capacity and your values and recover some of this burnout so that you can begin to show up more fully.
Love that. Well, for those that are interested in working with Monica, we will have some information about that in the description below. But until next time, thank you. Peace.